Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to another Snapshot video. This is Snapshot 21w07a and Minecraft has made yet another change to cave generation and introduced a whole new family of stone blocks that I'm really excited to explore and discover with you guys. So once again, I've fired up a brand new survival world in the Snapshot. These worlds are still not compatible with your old worlds, so you will probably want to start a brand new world to explore these. They can be upgraded from the previous worlds, but when you see what they have changed, you will probably understand why I would recommend starting a whole fresh world of its own. But just like the last video, I think we're really going to see the most impact of these changes if we do all of this stuff in survival mode. So I'm going to get geared up, I'm going to head down into a cave, and when I found a cave that I think is going to give us what we want, I'll bring you guys back in and we'll see exactly what this snapshot has to offer. Okay, I've spent a bit of time gearing up on the surface, getting a few supplies together. I've got enough rabbit hide for a bundle. I got some iron that I've used to make a shield and an iron pick. A little bit of leather that I can make some armor out of, and I think it's time to go caving. And I think some of the aquifer problems that we saw in the last snapshot have now been fixed because some of these caves go a little deeper than they used to. But one of the first things I wanted to point out here is that we have some changes to the way ore blocks look. This is iron ore right here. We have coal over there, and as we dig down, you'll start to see some other changes to different ore types. Some of them will remain the same, like I'm fairly certain copper and lapis have not changed, and diamond has not changed, but I think Mojang wanted to make the distinction between all of these different ore blocks in terms of their texture, as well as just their color, because for some people, it was getting a little difficult to tell which ore was which. For accessibility reasons, say for people who are colorblind and can't really tell the difference between gold and iron, it just made sense to vary the texture a little bit. And I don't know which of them we'll see. We'll hopefully see all of them throughout this video, but I'm fairly certain that gold has been changed to better match the pattern of nether gold ores, so you'll actually be able to recognize that one a little bit from the text you've seen in the nether update. In fact, amazingly, this cave goes deep enough that I can already see some diamonds down there, and we're at Y44 right now. We're a little way from the surface, but being able to look straight from the surface down into a cave with diamonds is not an experience you get every day, so that's pretty special. I'm just going to get together a little bit more material here. I think we will need a bucket so that I can bucket up a source of water and get down here a little bit easier, and hopefully from there on down, we should start to see some of the changes to cave generation. I'll hopefully be able to make a chest plate out of that stuff as well. There we go, got my chest plate on, I got a bucket of water and ready to take on these caves, and I can't believe that we are looking directly at a diamond that we could virtually see from the surface. So a few changes to ore distribution have happened in this snapshot, and there's a very handy graphic that explains the changes they've made in a little bit better detail. But basically, we will start to see different ranges in which ores are more common. Previously, it was just the same commonality, basically all the way from the top of the world to the bottom, with obvious changes for things like diamonds, which would only generate at a certain level, same with redstone and so forth, but the distribution was basically the same throughout all of the elevations of the world. Now that the caves have more depth for them to work with, Mojang have actually started to vary things up a little bit, so you might find more coal on the surface than you will start to find underground. And likewise, I think right now we're at the sweet spot for iron, where you'll find a ton of iron generating. Like if you look here, there are about 4 veins of iron that I can see from behind this creeper explosion, and what you're actually going to find is that certain levels are optimal to go mining for iron now. And that's actually going to add in some of what they were talking about with there being more strategy to mining. Choosing specific layers of the world to go caving is going to be a really interesting way of acquiring certain resources. Now, if we got some gold ore up here in the wall, I may as well take it. As you can see, this has the same sort of texture as you find in nether gold ore now. That's looking quite pretty, actually. I really like what they've done to change that up a little bit, and it certainly helps to distinguish it from some of the other blocks at a glance. But yeah, no, we are absolutely at peak iron generation right here. That's kind of wild. But my focus is going to be heading down here and seeing if we can get hold of those diamonds. So I'm going to quickly use the water bucket to get down and then hopefully get back up again. Looks like there's some redstone down there that we can grab while we're here as well. So redstone ore looks a little bit different. And to be honest, this is one of the only ones that I'm not super keen on the ore texture. The new ore texture seems like it doesn't have a huge distribution of red throughout some of the upper and lower areas here. It's sort of got some blank space up there that feels like on its own it doesn't quite look right to me. Obviously it blends in with the surrounding stone really well, but in isolation redstone ore does look a little strange. Despite that, I'm going to mine up a little bit of it just for the XP and for gathering some of it. It still obviously lights up, and oh, that is our first look at some of the new stuff. We're going to try and find a cave that will hopefully give us a better look at the world generation below this, and of course we are going to grab these diamonds since we're here. And right now, these diamonds have generated at Y9. We're standing at Y8 right now, looking at them at eye level, so that's still pretty low down in the world. But somehow we've managed to get there from the surface very, very quickly, thanks to one of those caves generating this way. And yeah, it looks like we're only getting 1 diamond out of this. Once again, I only find 1 diamond in my first vein. Not to worry though, we are still at diamond level, technically speaking. So the way diamond ore distribution has changed actually means that you'll find a few diamonds around here, a small scattering of diamonds at these elevations, but diamonds become more and more common the deeper in the world you go, encouraging the player to explore further and take more risk in order to gain more reward. So once again, it's no longer going to be the case that you'll want to dig down to Y11 and go branch mining for diamonds. Instead, you're going to be encouraged to search further down in the world and maybe start your branch mine a little lower, or maybe you won't want to branch mine at all because you'll just be able to collect a bunch of diamonds from the surface. Now I'm trying to find a point in this cave where it will start to go further down into the world, and it looks like we have a few branches here. You're still seeing generation of stuff like copper, but you will notice that there is a little bit less coal around than there used to be, and that is because coal generation basically stops as we get lower down into the world. Below Y0, okay, wasn't entirely sure I was going to make it back from that one, but aside from having to run around this zombie village here, I think we should be good to go. So, there we are. Anyway, as I was saying, coal distribution is actually going to stop around Y0. So, below this level, below where we're at right now in the world, you're really not going to see all that much coal. So that coal up there in the ceiling might actually end up being the last patch we see as we go further down into the world. This is a massive cave system, by the way, and they have tweaked a little bit of the caving structure now. So those large caves, like the one we're standing in right now, are a little bit less common. You're actually going to find that those caves are fewer and further between. So when you find them, it's a bit more of a special event than just kind of stumbling into something like this every time you're down here. So that coal up there in the ceiling might actually end up being the last patch we see as we go further down into the world. This is a massive cave system, by the way, and they have tweaked a little bit of the caving structure now. So those large caves, like the one we're standing in right now, are a little bit less common. You're actually going to find that those caves are fewer and further between. So when you find them, it's a bit more of a special event than just kind of stumbling into something like this every time you're down here. So I managed to hide myself away in this abandoned mineshaft and cook up a little bit more iron, so now I'm feeling a little bit better protected. Could still maybe do with an iron helmet, but I feel like I can actually step out into this cave now and take a look around. Once again, we got loads of iron around here, a little bit of coal and copper looking good, but I still want to find a spider or two if I can. I guess I could also break down these spider webs, so while those two fight it out, let me duck into another corner of this abandoned mineshaft and grab a couple of string, because I really want to make this bundle and tidy up my inventory, and this is what I get for putting the world on hard, I suppose. There we go. Okay, let's bundle up a bunch of this stuff, just clear out a little bit of space so I can see what's going on here, and we'll probably come back to some of that stuff later. One really helpful tip I've picked up with bundles, by the way, is that if you have a stack in there and you've got a little bit of space and you want to get a stack of something really specific out, say for example I wanted to get the rotten flesh out but it's buried a little bit further down, just get get one of the thing you want to collect, add one to the bundle, and then it brings it to the top, so then it's the first thing you take out of the bundle afterwards. That's actually what I've been doing to make sure that some of the food and stuff stays on the top. Obviously, it means you have to have another one of the thing in your inventory, but I know access to the stuff further down in the bundle is one of the problems people are running into, so that might be a good way of solving that. In the meantime, though, let's branch out and see if we can find a way further down into the world, because the stuff that's below Y0 really needs checking out. And I think the best way of doing that is to venture out into this cave and see if it leads any further down. Not to mention that this cave is so broad and wide that we should hopefully find a couple more diamonds lurking in the walls here and there. And I keep getting faked out by the cave lichen because it has a kind of similar color, but looks like we have stumbled upon a vein of diamond here, and it looks like an 8 vein. Oh, unfortunately, it's not. Never mind. We've got 4 here, 5. Okay, perfect. All right, let's grab a little bit of that stuff. I'm not going to worry about a diamond pickaxe. I think I'm going to prioritize diamond armor at this point because I really need a little bit of better protection down here. So let's get a diamond helmet on the go, and we can trash this iron one, I suppose. Again, really nice look at some of the new ore textures here, but again, I feel like there's a lot of space at the top of this redstone block. Just a couple more dots of redstone here and there would really make that one come alive for me, but I do like some of the other textures. Now, let's see if we can get further down into this cave, because here it looks like it gets a little further down, and you'll start to see this other mysterious material work its way in until we look around here and suddenly the landscape of the underground has changed forever. We are looking at the new addition to Minecraft 21w07a, Grimstone. And Grimstone was kind of teased at Minecraft Live, although we didn't exactly know what it was yet. As the Warden was being introduced and the Deep Dark biome was mentioned, there was this kind of weird material in the walls that wasn't really any kind of stone that we had seen before. And now that has arrived in the game in the form of Grimstone. We're going to find Grimstone really populating some of these caverns, and it basically stretches down everywhere below Y0. The only change that you'll see in the terrain around here is the occasional geode or patches of andesite, which really gives the underground a very different feel. You'll also notice that ore blocks don't really blend into Grimstone yet. They have the stone texture around them still, and that may be possibly going to stay that way. It does allow the ores to stand out a little bit down here for better or for worse, but it may be possible that we'll see Grimstone variants of these ores as well, so we will see. But Grimstone can, of course, be mined using standard tools, and it basically takes the place of stone while you're down here in the lower parts of the world. So, for example, if I wanted to make a stone pickaxe, I still have a bit of cobblestone on me, but I could also make one out of Grimstone, and it's just like blackstone in the nether. It becomes a stone variant. That bat actually scared me just then. And being a stone-type material, it has a bunch of stone-type crafting recipes attached to it. So you can make slabs out of Grimstone. You can polish it by putting it in a 2x2 and turn the polished Grimstone into Grimstone bricks somehow. I haven't figured that out yet. I'll probably need a stone cutter to do that. But of course, those have slabs and stairs and possibly even wall variants. Yep, there's a Grimstone wall right there as well. There's so much to explore with these new blocks. I'm having a really fun time messing around with them, and I think the texture on its own is really quite cool. Grimstone currently doesn't have any smelting recipes, and I'm fairly certain there isn't a cracked variant of the brick at all, so we're actually going to have to smelt up some cobblestone to get smooth stone before I can make a stone cutter and try and show you the rest of the recipes. But I want to draw your attention to Grimstone generating naturally in the world and ask how you feel about it, because right now I quite like it in the ambience of all of these torches and just having patches of light throughout the caves here. Cave lichen is providing a couple of hits of light throughout this cave, and the rest of the time the Grimstone feels like nicely moody and dark. The problem I have with Grimstone really starts to show its head when an area like this is a little bit better lit, or when you've lit a large area of these caverns and the lighting is a lot more even. To illustrate that, I've actually got cheats turned on in this world. I haven't been using them so far, but I'm just going to give myself the night vision effect for like 100 seconds here. And now we have a problem with Grimstone. And obviously you're not going to see the world this way most of the time, but I kind of find that when you remove all of the lighting from Grimstone and when you're looking at it in night vision, which some players might want to do because some people might decide they want to come down into the world with night vision so that they have better access to mining and they don't have to worry about torching some of these larger caverns, I find that the entire thing looks really noisy. Compare it to stone. Stone almost feels like a relief to look at after this because the Grimstone texture has so much contrast in it that with it being absolutely everywhere, your eyes aren't really allowed anywhere to rest, and as a result, looking at all of this can get a little bit overwhelming to the senses. But if I do effect clear here and we return to that moody lighting that we're used to in caves, I actually like Grimstone a lot better, and so right now I'm feeling kind of ambivalent about Grimstone in natural generation, but I think overall it makes a really nice addition to the game and is going to fill a gap that a lot of people have wanted to fill in the texture palette. Now finally I can make myself a stone cutter and I might be able to show you a few more of the Grimstone variants we've got here. There is a chiseled Grimstone in here which looks really quite strange to me. I wonder if this is meant to evoke the Warden in the same way that the chiseled sandstone has a creeper face on it and the chiseled red sandstone has the wither. I'm pretty sure chiseled nether brick has like a wither skeleton skull on. There's a few different chiseled variants, all of which are sort of supposed to evoke a certain creature, and this kind of has a larger open set of eyes and mouth like the Warden might. I've seen a couple of people compare it to a pufferfish. I personally think it looks a little bit like an upside down shulker box that's sort of half open. Weirdly, I'm not seeing the recipes for Grimstone brick or Grimstone tiles in here, and I don't think those are slab crafting recipes. I think the slab crafting recipe is chiseled Grimstones, so it may be that those were omitted from the survival crafting recipes and we can only get them in the creative inventory for now. Either that or there is a smarter way of getting hold of them, which, yeah, you can't shift click any of these into the furnace, so it looks like we can't smelt them to get those either. Well, we'll have to take a look at those in creative after we are done here. But in theory, as we look around some of these lower caves, diamonds and some of the other ores are going to change in distribution, and it's going to be a little bit more common to find diamonds and redstone further down in the world like this, but it's going to be harder to find stuff like coal. As you can see from looking around us, oh, the skeleton, I think, aggroed one of the creepers. Oh well, sucks for him. I think we're not really seeing any coal in the walls around here at all. One of my favorite things about this region of the world is the blend between stone and Grimstone. They've actually started to work Grimstone in naturally. It's not just a flat layer. Obviously, it kind of distributes itself around the stone layers at the bottom of Y0 and getting into the negative Y coordinates. And I really think that looks quite good in natural generation. Obviously, it's the kind of thing that people will want to terraform their way through if they're interested in, you know, making this look a little bit prettier. There's definitely a cool gradient that you can get between stone and Grimstone now. We've got a couple of aquifers down here in the cave as well, a couple of those water levels, and they're looking a lot more solid now, which I like. I like the fact that the wall is built up around that, forming a much more natural looking dam for all the water. I think that's kind of perfect, actually. And I think just changing up the terrain generation down here to include all of this Grimstone has really given it a feeling of character. Like, there's a lot more character to this area. It feels like a biome of its own now, instead of just an extension of the caves we had further up, which to my mind is quite a good thing. And I think Grimstone reacts really well to light as well. This may just be an aspect of like smooth lighting being on and that kind of stuff, but you'll notice that Grimstone next to a torch feels quite a cool grey, whereas I feel like the light extends into warmer tones the further out we get. You get a kind of like a yellowing of some of the material around here, and I think that works really well for Grimstone. Less so for some other materials, but Grimstone has enough like contrast in its texture that really works as a vibe. Slowly ditching the iron stuff as we go, so that's looking pretty good. Now let's pop over to this half of the cave where things are looking a little bit flatter, and I want to torch some of the area around here to try and get the effect I was showing you earlier with the night vision and how kind of high contrast everything looks. To be honest though, in torchlight it doesn't look that bad, so I think it's only really night vision that I have a problem with. It starts to feel a little bit grating on me for a while if there is night vision involved. But those dark areas that torches still leave in some parts, and some like subtlety of lighting, is really the approach I want from Grimstone in these caves. Now, for those of you who've been paying attention since Minecraft Live, you'll know that we haven't seen anything of the Warden yet, and the addition of Grimstone down here kind of makes me assume that we are getting towards the period where the Warden is going to be added to the game, at which point this may be a very different experience. The Warden is, of course, going to be a very tough mob to deal with. It can sense you based on sound you make or vibrations that it detects in the surrounding environment more accurately, and so you'll find that the Warden becomes a bit of a challenge once you get down into these areas of the caves and you're trying to mine stuff while also trying to stay quiet, and that's going to be an interesting time. It'll be interesting to see how the game is balanced at that point, and in caverns as large as these, how far away the Warden can detect you, how frequently you find the Warden spawning down here, because the Warden is supposed to be dwelling in these lower regions of the world, and if this texture is anything to go by, this is sort of the environment we saw it in at Minecraft Live. So I'm noticing right now that I'm running out of coal, and I won't be able to find any in the surrounding environment, so I'm actually going to have to rely on some of the oak I brought with me and make some charcoal. That's another consideration. You really want to prepare if you're coming down here. You'll need to bring a lot of food, you'll need to bring a pretty plentiful supply of coal from further up in the world, and you will need to know where your exits are. But after our little hectic introduction to this caving session here, I'm actually doing pretty well at this point. We've got a bit of diamond armor, some diamond tools, and of course if we venture further down in here, we are likely to be able to get a few more diamonds from the surrounding environment. We also don't know for certain if we're going to get lush caves and dripstone caves further down in the world like this, so you may find that these biomes end up getting broken up a little bit by the other cave generation that's being introduced in this update. And personally, I would really like to see that, but of course it depends what the biome distribution is and how frequently you're going to encounter areas where there is stuff like the Warden. So with a few more torches ready, I'm going to do a little bit more exploring. I'm hoping to naturally find an abandoned mineshaft down here, because there have been a few changes to those made recently that I'm really quite keen on seeing in survival, but otherwise we can probably go to spectator mode and fly around a little bit to see if we can encounter those. A few more diamonds waiting for me in the floor, always love to see that, and yes, we do get this cave breaking out into a few lower patches like this. I do like the fact that we've got a little bit of hiding space in here, some crawl spaces that we can get into and potentially shelter from a few mobs, because those wide open caves are really going to be a tough environment to handle. And so this cave didn't seem to have an abandoned mineshaft in it, so I'm probably going to drop into spectator mode and take a look around to see if I can find some of the other changes, and then we'll go into creative mode to take a look at the blocks that just aren't available to me in survival right now. But going back to what I was saying earlier about the texture of Grimstone looking kind of overwhelming, I really think that is just a product of night vision and how harsh everything looks, because looking down at this now, with again some subtlety of lighting, torches not providing light all the way up to the ceiling, and a little bit of depth being visible through here, I really don't mind it all that much. I think it's just night vision removing all of the lighting and everything being kind of almost glowing blue with how harsh everything is that I really don't like all that much. I do wonder if some biome fog down here in the lower parts of the world might end up coming into play, and we know that the Warden seems to have some kind of effect on your surroundings where it will darken things and almost give you like a temporary blindness debuff. So I do kind of wonder if we're going to start to see stuff like that come into play and making these areas a little bit more atmospheric. But if I turn my render distance down to 6 chunks right now, there's really some interesting ambience going on. I think because the sun is either rising or setting outside. There's this kind of peach-colored fog over there and then some bluer fog around there, which I think, yeah, is just like daylight creeping in from the surface. So you're going to find this natural mist occurs down here if you're playing on a lower render distance. Mine is set to 6 chunks right now, so I can still see a fair distance into the cave, but it does feel a little bit unnatural, almost like the outside world is intruding on this cave a little bit, and we're just seeing the void beyond us, but I really do like the way that a little bit of mist adds some ambience to the place. So I wonder if, like the Nether, we're going to see a little bit more biome fog down here in the lower reaches of the world. Well, we've managed to survive a journey to this brand new Grimstone environment. Who knows if we will survive it when it actually becomes the deep dark. But for now, let's pop into spectator mode, and I'm going to fly around a little bit to find an abandoned mineshaft, because, oh, there is one right here, but I really wanted to show you some of the changes that happened now that these abandoned mineshafts can pop out into caves. Here we go, right here. I'm going to put down some torches in creative to show you a little bit. There are now chains that will come down from the ceiling and suspend abandoned mineshaft platforms instead of propping them up with the oak logs that we saw. There are basically combinations of those starting to appear in mineshafts here, and you'll find these chains from the ceiling happening in areas where there is, you know, a reasonable distance to the ceiling, and elevated walkways like this throughout a cave system, which obviously right here we're seeing a bit of intersection with this ravine, this aquifer, and a whole bunch of additional abandoned mineshaft sections popping out together. But having chains suspending them from the ceiling really gives a little bit more character to abandoned mineshafts and starts to shake them up a little bit from the the mineshafts that we have seen before. By the way, it is perfectly possible for an abandoned mineshaft to now generate inside of a Grimstone patch. So we're actually seeing a very different look to abandoned mineshafts down here. And once again, these might be quite fun environments to explore if you are looking for diamonds down here in the lower reaches of the world, but imagine encountering the Warden in an abandoned mineshaft and having nowhere else to go. That's a pretty scary thought, and one that makes Minecraft seem a little bit more like a horror survival game than it has been previously. This right here has been one of the best examples I've been able to find, though. The chains suspending the abandoned mineshaft platforms from the ceiling above a geode as well. So you've got a geode right here, and you can see quite how well I think Tuff blends in with the Grimstone there. The textures are very different, but they are on a similar scale of grey, and I think those are going to work really well together in some more creative player builds. But yes, as you can see here, multiple chains dangling from the ceiling, suspending the abandoned mineshaft instead of the beams and props we are used to and the oak pillars that we saw introduced in the last one. This one is probably not long for this world since it is currently being set on fire, but yes, from the last snapshot to this one, a few more changes just to make abandoned mineshafts feel like they fit a little bit better into the world. Alrighty, it is Superflat Test World time, just so we can take a look at some of the other stuff that's going on with Grimstone. I should also add that Superflat Worlds have also been adjusted to have the new terrain depth involved, so we are now standing at Y-60, and in theory we could build up to Y320 from here, so that's like 380 blocks worth of height to build with. Creative builders go nuts. The other fun thing is that you can see passive mob spawning is still working at this level of the world. There are cows spawning in this otherwise fairly plain plains biome around me, and of course structures will generate normally in these worlds and so forth. So we are seeing cows basically everywhere, although I haven't really seen any other passive mobs, so I don't think the cows are taking up the mob cap. There are a few sheep generated naturally as part of the village and cats and whatnot, but yeah, I wonder if there's something weird going on there. We'll see. Anyway, I've got rid of the cows for now, and let's go in to take a look at Grimstone and its variants, because, oh boy, we've got a lot of stuff to cover here. So you're going to find Grimstone generating naturally in the world next to andesite, and that is quite a contrast. It's obviously a very dark and light kind of thing, but the andesite, I think, is really where we're going to see Grimstone kind of tempered a little bit and given room to breathe, because like I said, this texture, while it is a really cool texture, feels quite noisy to me. And the polished Grimstone that we're going to be able to make, again, has that really, like, dark black border around the outside of it, so it tiles very obviously to me, whereas something like polished andesite has a little bit of a lighter border and it still tiles quite well, but again, like, this feels very deliberate. It feels like it's got a very high contrast to the texture, whereas this feels a little bit more subtle, and it's kind of fun to play around with the two of them. One thing I was talking about while we were exploring in survival was Grimstone looking really great next to the Tuff from Geodes. And Tuff, when it was introduced, was a texture that didn't really have a great deal of companions in the Minecraft texture set that we have right now, but I do think those two go together quite well. There's something in that range of grey, that kind of middling range of grey, that in Tuff feels a little bit greener and browner, but in the Grimstone feels a little bit kind of more purple. And somehow those don't go together too badly. I find that they actually complement each other quite well. So again, especially for organic builds, it'd be really interesting to see some of this. Take Grimstone out of the natural environment, though, and it starts to look almost deliberate with the lines, the striation going across it. It starts to look a bit more like tiles. And that is where some of the variants of Grimstone really come into play, because if we look at some of the other blocks you can craft with it, we've seen chiseled Grimstone already. But the two we couldn't craft in survival were Grimstone bricks and Grimstone tiles. Now, Grimstone tiles feels like a much more deliberate sharpening of the existing Grimstone texture, with a few of the lines moved around. And I'm not certain how I feel about this block yet. I think it's quite cool in a modern look, but I feel like the section that's been squeezed into the bottom here feels a little odd down there, and it may just be that it doesn't connect to the next texture down, so you can kind of see the repetition in it, but it's tiled. It's meant to be repetitive anyway. I think maybe once I'm used to this texture, it could be really nice for modern builds. Imagine that as like a kitchen backsplash or something like that. It's got potential. The real star of the show, however, I think is going to be Grimstone bricks. Once again, while the texture is fairly high contrast, the lines in this are very dark. What this provides, I think, is a kind of crucial bridge between stone brick and blackstone brick. We actually now have a stone brick gradient in the game now for the first time, and so you're going to see people start to work in elements like this into their builds and actually kind of, taper one color into another, one darkness into another with the Grimstone brick as a bridge. And obviously Grimstone is going to be abundant down there. As far as I know, it is not renewable, but it is, there's enough of it down there that once you get hold of some of it, provided you don't get killed by the warden, you're going to find it very, very easy to build with this stuff. And while the bricks might look a little bit harsh up close, and each one does have its own sort of unique twist on the texture, there are a few like little flecks and chips here and there in the different versions of it. If you look at it from further away, you really start to get a very nice gradient between them. That gradient can, of course, be enhanced by some of the other materials, because you'll notice regular Grimstone isn't quite as dark, doesn't have as much contrast as Grimstone brick. Let's take a look at some of the other grey blocks we have in the palette, and we'll really start to see a change here. Now, this is really quite a nice range of grey blocks now. Grimstone sits perfectly in between basalt and blackstone for me. It makes a really nice transition from tuff and some of the other natural stone types. I think it sits in there really well. Obviously, like, the change to a much more purple-looking blackstone is still a little bit of a challenge, but potentially that's where you could work some more basalt in between the gaps. But I really like working with these textures quite a lot, and we're going to see a bunch of those, I think, in people's builds in the new update. Once people start building with this stuff, we are going to be unstoppable builders. It's going to be really, really fun to work with, and providing a bit more modern texture in the game is a much needed addition, I think. I'm still not entirely sure where chiseled Grimstone fits into all of that, but believe me, this is going to be worth working with, I think. And I'm even omitting stuff like concrete powder and concrete cyan terracotta. There's so many more grayscale blocks have started to creep into the game, and grey as a neutral is obviously a really valuable part of the builder's palette, so we're going to see a whole lot of this stuff popping up in future. While we're here in a super flat world, we may as well also take a look at the ore blocks in isolation so you can really get a feel for these new textures. You're looking at a little bit of change to coal and iron, and gold, of course, looking a lot more like nether gold now. You can see that the pattern is exactly the same. It's identical, but with stone surrounding it instead of netherrack. Even has a little bit more depth in the stone texture, it feels like to me. Lapis has stayed the same because lapis had a unique texture already, and diamond ore has been chosen to remain this way because diamond ore is kind of the iconic one. You know what you're looking for when you're looking for diamonds, and so having that change is going to be a little different. Likewise, emerald ore already had a unique texture, so that is staying the same. And redstone ore is still the one I don't like as much, just because of how much these other blocks fill the ore texture up towards the top of the block. Redstone ore feels like it has, it's got 4 pixels worth of space there that could just use a little bit of tweaking. I almost like the texture more vertically than I do horizontally for some reason. But yeah, anyway, that's a look at the ore blocks at least, and potentially there is room for those to change in upcoming updates as they start to tweak a few more things. While we're here in creative, let's take one quick look at the redstone creative tab, because that has now changed to prioritize some of the more essential ingredients in redstone wiring first, and just reorder the rest of this so that everything feels like it's in a little bit more logical order. I think previously some of the materials that had been added more recently were kind of, down here at the end, and everything needed a little bit of a reshuffle. So I think it's good that these are now ordered by category. We've got some of the what they call unique activators, things like, target blocks and lightning rods, daylight sensors, that kind of stuff, before the common activators like buttons and pressure plates, and then various miscellaneous other bits and pieces thrown in there. But I feel like it's a little bit better structured now, and the stuff that you're going to want for every redstone build is right there at the top for you. Back in our survival world for one more change, they've made a couple of changes to the way strongholds will generate, and mostly you will find now that they are entirely encased in rock. You don't find them branching out into caves and ravines as much now, basically to avoid the likelihood of the portal room being completely erased by world generation, it seems like, and I think priority has been given to the formation of the Stronghold corridors over natural cave generation. You may still find a couple of places here and there where the floor breaks out into more cave gen, and I actually found a really unique example when I found this stronghold purely by chance, and this one is intersected by a geode, which I think actually makes for a really compelling look to this corridor of the stronghold. Yeah, there's a couple of places here and there where this stuff is open to a cave, but largely speaking, strongholds should have a lower chance of being bisected by caves. They're going to be more surrounded by stone in future. And that provides a really nice environment, I think, for us to finish up this video. Folks, thank you so much for checking out the snapshot with me. I hope you enjoyed this little look at it and my opinion about where Grimstone and some of the other changes to world generation are going. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, don't forget to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.